an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Holy Sister, the third book of the Ancestor, chapters 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18. In these chapters, well, Yisht is finally dead. It's a hard-won death. And I really thought that Zole was dead. She's not, and I'm glad. But also, then where is she? Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Martin for commissioning this episode. Martin is in the chat. Hi, Martin. This is a very eventful group of chapters. I will admit, I feel like a little bit of a dope for not really processing the fact that Zole isn't with them at the convent anymore. Which means, obviously, that something had to have happened to cause her to be separated from Nona. But I think my, assumption here, granted, not based in anything, but when I stop and think about it, I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's what I thought, was that Zole was, in primary danger with having the Shipheart in custody and having been the quote chosen one that Zole had put in place. And so I think that I just assumed they sent, and by they, I don't mean anyone in authority. I mean that Nona and Zole discussed it and decided that Zole should go off on her own mission / thing. And I had no real thought about what that was. It was not a fully formed thought. It was just my sort of Zole, as much as I really enjoy her as a character and as much as she has been instrumental in so many moments, she has always felt very separate from what's going on with the rest of the Gal Pal team. And it was just appropriate in my mind that she be sent off on her own sort of other mission. So at this point, where chapter 18 ended, which is her admitting that she was sent to spy on Nona, basically, I feel pretty validated in that because it does seem like that's what happened. It's just in a very different way than I expected. I think it's fairly clever of the author here, Mark Lawrence, to be I'm going to bring up that Zole got thrown off this cliff down a hole, whatever. I'm going to jump back to the present and have a character say they miss Zole in such a way as to imply that she is dead. And then I'm going to bounce back again and be psych, she's fine. I definitely fell for it. I mean, how could you not? I'm not mad at myself for that, I think a little bit about the way in which writers mess with us sometimes. And it's always I have very mixed feelings about it usually, because there's an aspect of really enjoying getting got when it's done well. You always appreciate an element of surprise, and you always appreciate an author being able to keep you on your toes and make you go, oh shit. And it's a fine balance to do that and not make your audience feel as if you're kind of being cheap or fucking with them. And I will say for myself, I didn't feel that here. I was there was an instant of me thinking Zole was really dead. And I respected that choice. I really was almost impressed by it, because choosing to kill a character that feels like they're going to be so important can be really effective. And Zole definitely feels important. On the other hand, I couldn't really get myself to believe that she was dead, really. I honestly, when she didn't come back right away, I kind of thought, I bet she's not dead and we're going to see her again. It's just going to, she'll drag herself up out of that hole and we'll find out later that she hadn't died. It just happens a lot sooner than I thought. I'm getting way ahead of myself, of course. So let's back it up to chapter 14, 3 years earlier. And Nona is looking at the tunnel into the black ice. And we get a sense throughout these chapters of just how threatening the black ice is. Now, we found out in the last section that it's occupied basically by all of the demons that have been separated from human beings by ship hearts, I guess. And that is bad enough. I mean, that's just such a threatening image in and of itself. But there is something about people voluntarily digging holes through this ice. And we find out later that Yisht was drinking the water that was rolling off the ice. And so her teeth are black. And this is I think one could say that she got, she was attacked by a bunch of these devils, in the fight, in the confrontation between her and Nona earlier in the last book. But I am assuming when Zole says it's just full, it's due to her drinking the water. I could be wrong about that, but I think that's where that's coming from. However, at this point, they are in the dark. And Zole eventually gets the ship heart light going. And I find it really interesting how Zole is able to hold this thing in a way that Nona can't due to, what she has been put through. Because later on, when Nona is alone, she's compelled to hold on to it because it's, first of all, the only source of light. And second of all, it's ensuring that the devils will back out of the ice away from her. But it does feel like it's killing her. And it's unclear to me how much of that is actually true and how much of that is her imagination and the pain of, just the spiritual impact of holding the thing. I can't totally tell how much damage it's genuinely doing to her. And if that has been sort of mentioned in a definitive way, do let me know, Martin. But I don't remember if it has or not. So they are hiking through these tunnels of ice that there is waterfalls within these tunnels. There are explosions of pressurized water and air that sort of behave like geysers. And Nona is getting absolutely soaked through and is freezing cold. And there is something about cold. It is the kind of thing, if you have not experienced real, true cold, there's no way to describe what that is like. And it's part of the reason why people from the north can be so smug about the cold to people who were like, oh, it's really chilly out when it's 46 degrees. Because as much as it is really irritating and smug and pointless to laugh at somebody, there is a sense when you have gone through cold that feels like it might kill you, that anybody complaining about something less than that is just this precious summer child that has no real idea. And there's no help for that. The cold that she is experiencing here it's getting to the point where she can't even feel her hands. Later on, when she's in this fight with Yisht, she is unable to sense her arm and hand wielding the sword that she's using to defend herself. And her fighting is just kind of embarrassingly bad because she hasn't really got control of herself. So this whole section here is honestly kind of amusing because it's a lot of Nona asking questions and Zole refusing to answer her or Nona making comments and Zole refusing to respond to those comments or have a conversation with her. And it's so interesting because Zole has said that she views Nona as a friend and rather likes her. There's a sense of that. But and I don't think that this is any indicator that that isn't true or that Zole doesn't like Nona as much as we thought. I think it's just that Zole is so practical and she has limited energy right now. And she's kind of like, I'm not going to waste my time making small talk with you when we are fighting for our lives here. And I don't see the point in having this like idle chit chat when I need to focus entirely on us making it out of here alive and on not letting the ship heart kill me and on, keeping in mind where we're headed and who's after us. There is a lot that Zole feels much more responsible for than Nona. This is an interesting dynamic because Nona has often been the brains of the operation in the past with her friends and has been the one that they look to. And when she's with Zole, Zole is so clearly the one in charge. And I kind of enjoy that the author included a character to be that for Nona so that she isn't always the one in charge. There's somebody in this universe who is as competent as she is, if not more so, and has insider information in a lot of ways on how to stay alive in certain places and the advantages of certain areas, which we find out later, where there are some caches of fuel and food and whatever. And I don't know. I just kind of like that Nona has someone to occasionally take care of her in a way rather than her always having to be the one. It's just, it's nice, especially for it to be a peer, because it would be really easy to have this role fall to an adult. And sometimes it's been Kettle every now and then, but Kettle feels sort of unstable to me. And I don't mean like, mentally or as a person. I just mean she isn't wholly reliable because she has her own reasons for doing things. And when she steps in, it's often part of another thing that she has going on. Zole is 100% in the boat with Nona. So I don't know. It's just a character like Nona who has been forced to be so self-sufficient and felt so alone for so much of her life. Having somebody that will have her back so completely without even a question like this feels really valuable to me. So there are some moments where Zole is talking about working air and water is not so different from working rock because she is able to tell when some of these like geysers are going to begin to go off, and she's able to like keep Nona from getting zapped by pretty powerful jets of water, and the water is basically poison. So it's dangerous to be hit with it, and as they come into this huge, like, sort of gallery made of stone, Zole goes quiet, and Nona's like, "What's wrong?" And she says, "Yisht is here." And Nona, I love this, the way that this, like, whole conversation goes. Yish, you said the Noi Gwyn wouldn't come near the black ice. You can't get much more susceptible to the devils than Yisht, right? Maybe, maybe not. Her mind is far from weak, but Yish no longer has need to fear the Klaulathu. She doesn't. No, she is full. Yikes. That's a good line. It is very threatening. I don't like it. And basically she feels, Yisht does, that she has likely trapped these two. So that's why she's attacking them here rather than like getting them at the entrance. Like, because Nona asks that question very particularly, like, she could have come at us sooner than this. Why didn't she? And Zole is like, we could have kind of escaped from her in some way, but now we've just walked right into this. This is a very good position for her. It seemed somehow that through all Nona's dreams of vengeance, Yisht might have been waiting for her here within the cathedral vastness of this lightless cavern, black waters rushing past her, the meltwater rain falling endlessly around her. Yisht saw the short game with unequaled clarity, just as Abbess Glass saw the long game. Nona had difficulty seeing either, but somehow she knew this would end here, one way or the other. And Yisht and Zole have it out here in a way that, like, Zole had assumed, or Nona had assumed that she was going to be defending Zole because she is her shield. And yet, when Zole tells her, oh, no, I'm doing this, there is an impossible to deny element of relief to Nona, which I respected the fact that she could even admit that to herself. She knows that she's really not up to fighting Yisht, probably in the best of times, but once she's inhabited by devils, I think that adds an element of unwinnability to the equation. And this moment of her just being like, fine, I'll do it, and stepping forward, and then Zole being like, no, I gotta do it. I also felt that deep relief. I'm not going to lie. And this is when Yisht smiles and they see that her teeth are black, and Nona's like, oh my God, she's been drinking the water. So, long story short, Zole and Yisht fight, and Yisht winds up grabbing Zole and just dropping her off the side into this like chasm it's so dark in here, it just looks like there's no bottom to it. And the scream that Zole lets out, I mean, I don't know that we've ever heard her scream. It's hard for me to remember. But that, for me, was like the closest to proof that she maybe was actually dead. Because we just haven't seen her have an emotional reaction, really. In the midst of all of her fights, she has been as cold and focused as you could wish to be. So, yeah, this moment was really, like, shocking. And Nona is still aware she can't win. So even after Zole is killed, Nona turns around and is going to run. And the whole place is so incredibly steep that she has to use knives driven into the ice to get herself, like, up certain steep embankments and whatnot. And there's a mention earlier on about how her flaw blades won't dig in because it seems as if like the devils are sort of the flaw blades are made out of a material that the devils are sort of impervious to. I don't think it's the ice itself, right? It's the fact that the devils occupy the ice that make it so that she can't get a hold with that. And there's something about her flaw blades being useless against this ice that makes it so much worse to me and makes me like really anxious. I don't know why. So Nona, again, she's weakened. She's cold. She goes up against Yisht eventually because Yisht begins to fight against her and catches up with her and wants to ship heart and almost loses. And she does this thing that's really smart. So, again, it's been mentioned already, but I'm reminding you all anyway. Yisht can see what somebody is about to do, right? In the split second before they do it. Which is the kind of thing that, like, always sounds like a really helpful power. And obviously is, and I think, especially if you were sort of born with this ability, you just figure out how to make it work for you and it becomes second nature. But I always think about how I would actually, like, if I were to suddenly have that power, it would be a really tricky thing to make it useful and not just confusing for me. So Nona, like, stuffs one of the openings that the geysers come out of full of throwing stars so that when she goes up against Yisht, these throwing stars get thrown out by the pressure because of the geyser and not because Nona chose to throw them. Which means that's like the one way to attack Yisht, in this circumstance anyway, where Nona isn't like her ability to see what Nona can do won't actually help her. And it works. I mean, it doesn't kill her, but it gets her weakened enough that Nona is able to kill her eventually herself, just because she is so, she has been brought low. But it is very unnerving to see how much damage she can take before she is really like on the edge of death, because it's these devils are sort of like keeping her from bleeding out, keeping injuries from doing to her what they really should. And I just feel like that is an unfair advantage. Like, remind me if Kiat did that for Nona. Were there times where she should have been bleeding more and she didn't because Kiat kept that from happening? So anyway, but yeah, and I love like the bit of sort of pride before she dies, where Yisht says, "You cannot kill me, I cannot die." The ice triber, seemingly dazed by the impact, tugged at the star embedded in her forehead. The steel point came clear of the bone with a squeaking noise, and blood trickled into Yisht's eye. She tossed the weapon aside. Yes, Nona's fingers found the hilt of Yisht's tular, lying where the wind had dropped it, a yard to her right. She drew her remaining knife and stabbed it into the ice, gaining purchase to spin around. Yes, you can. Blood had blinded Yisht on the side the blow came in from. She raised her hand even so, but the knife slipped from her fingers. Nona didn't know if Yisht was too dazed to properly mine the future, or if the circumstances simply gave no chance to evade the blow. All she knew was the rush of relief as the tular sheared first through Yisht's hand and then her neck. Her severed head followed the sword's arc and bounced away into the darkness. Later on, when we return to Nona here, there is no satisfaction in Yisht's death. It's satisfaction in the fact that she isn't going to die now, but she has been seeking vengeance against Yisht for some time now, for her friend's death, and she finally has gotten it, and it just doesn't really mean anything. And that's something that it's a bit of a trope, that seeking revenge isn't actually satisfying, that it can feel really hollow and empty. And I don't know how much I believe that. That always has felt like the kind of thing that people who are guilty of things say to make it so that someone won't try and hold them responsible for things. But I guess I like the one that really always rung true to me was The Princess Bride, when Inigo Montoya is just like, well, I've spent so long trying to catch this guy that now that I've got him, I don't know what to do with my life. That's a very different thing, though, than it not feeling meaningful or satisfying. And I wonder if there's like anybody out there who was like, no, it was definitely satisfying and I'm super glad I did it and it was everything I wanted and I would do it again, Not that I don't think that her lack of satisfaction means that Nona wouldn't do it again. That's not really what I mean, but I just think it's interesting when Nona has these moments because she can be so bloodthirsty and then finds out that it isn't actually what she had sort of pictured it to be. So then we go to chapter 15 and we have all of the girls like greeting each other after the heist is over. They've got the book. There's a really funny moment where Jula pretends that she lost the book. And honestly, it shouldn't have been as funny as it was, but I cracked up. She's like, I had it. I know I had it. Oh my God. What a mean fucking trick. But that cracked me up. That is some shit I would do. Just an inappropriate moment, a mean-spirited kind of trick, and I would do it. And there's this moment. They're talking to Marcus, and he says to Nona, I did you a grave injustice at the academy. I hope that our account is now settled. It is, Nona said. I'm not sure any of us will survive the next month, but if we do survive, then whether it's under Dernish overlords, the Battle Queen's dominion, or our own glorious emperor, long may he reign, I would like to meet you again, Nona Grey. And this moment is so funny. It shouldn't be this funny. Nona felt the heat rise in her cheeks. Ruli and Jula stared from her to Marcus and back, open-mouthed. Nona opened her own, calling on the ancestor or the hope or any small god who might be listening to put some words there, any words at all, as long as they were cool, witty, and sophisticated. A moment's silence stretched to the point at which any coherent sound would be acceptable as long as it vaguely resembled a response. Ancestors' blessings, brother? Ruli asked, probably for the 10th time. Ancestors' blessings? 11. It was all I could think to say. Nona picked up the pace again. Verity's lights lay 3 miles behind them, the twinkling of the convent 2 miles ahead. But ancestors' blessings? Jula panted. I was stressed, all right? Nona saw Marcus's eyebrows go up again. She couldn't stop seeing it. Oh, God, this is so... I will confess, I have not, in my memory, run into this problem. I'm so fucking glib that in most circumstances, I can come up with a response that I flatter myself is adequate. But I have seen this sort of thing unfold in front of me, and it is the most awkward thing, and I always feel so much because whether you're on the receiving end or you're the person who said the thing that really doesn't work in the context of the conversation, either way, it's incredibly awkward. And you just, so I felt for her. Oh God, I love it so much. Martin is saying, it's funny little moments like this that remind you she's only like 17, such an awkward teenager. Exactly. Yeah, I haven't personally had these kinds of moments but I have been the person saying something and getting a weird response and have had to make allowances and be like, okay, they were clearly just feeling super awkward and did not know what to say. I'm going to have to let them have that one. I love how much this comes up in her mind. Just, she can't shake it. This is the kind of thing that you're going to be 45 in the shower, suddenly remembering that you made this moment so awkward and you're going to cringe out of nowhere. So they get back to the Abbey, and everybody has to sort of split up except for Nona and Ara. Eventually even they do a little bit, but there are some soldiers that show up that make them think that they are going to be caught. And once they finally get in bed, there is a moment where they get woken up quickly again by that bell. What is it called? I'm trying to find the bell name. Bittel? And yeah, Bittel. And it's the bell that isn't used except for sort of in emergency situations. And Nona is really oh, fuck, because that, in her mind, is a clear indicator. They have been caught, and they are about to be made an example of in front of everybody. And reminder, Nona still has in her possession the Abbess's seal that she stole from Abbess Wheel and has not yet had a chance to return. And she's trying to figure out a way that she can get that back to her without getting caught. And this situation actually winds up presenting itself the way for her to give it back without getting caught. As it turns out, she is being offered all of the paths to choose from. Let's see. She is judged to have passed the path test. God, that was hard to say. I offer her the blue of a mystic sister. She is judged to have passed the blade test and is acceptable to wear the red. I offer her a place as a martial sister. Novice Nona has passed the wire test, and I can find no legitimate reason for her not to be offered the gray of a sister of discretion. And Abbess Wheel says, there you have it, choose and hurry up. You're not the last to take her orders today. There's war on our doorstep. So Abbess Wheel does not offer her holy sister in the assumption, which I think most of us could understand, that she wouldn't take it anyway. Doesn't even put it out there. And I'm assuming that it would have been Wheel that could offer it. So at this point, Nona says, a holy sister. I want to be a holy sister. And everybody who knows what a fighter she is, like everybody sort of exclaims behind her and is just like, wait, what is she doing? Abbess Wheel clasped her bony fingers to Nona's cheek. For faith is what is needed in the darkest hours. Faith! She stared past Nona at the ranks of novices behind, daring any to disagree. Perhaps I was wrong about you. A shake of her head. Perhaps. Now, I will be honest. In this moment, when she embraced her, I was like, oh, Nona picked this so that she could just get back the seal. But I was really like, did she really just choose an entire path based on the fact that she has to get the seal back to her somehow? Like, I mean, would she? And I guess that when I'm reading it now, it says the old woman embraced her as every abbess must embrace each soul called to the ancestor's service, which doesn't actually necessarily mean that it's anybody who is a holy sister. I guess if she, whatever path she picked, she might have had to embrace the abbess. I'm not positive on that, but I really thought for a second that was the entire reason why she decided to choose this, because otherwise I could not see it. And as it turns out, she promised Abbess Glass that she would choose to become a holy sister. And later on, she gets some approval from Wheel for something that she knows Wheel would never have agreed to, back when. And she thinks that maybe Abbess Glass foresaw that Nona becoming a holy sister would soften Wheel towards her enough that she would be able to get her to agree to some things that she might not otherwise. And it would put Nona in a position of being able to negotiate more, which I think is genius and makes total sense, even though it is such a totally transparent, superficial move. Somebody like Wheel is not a subtle person. Wheel sees the world in black and white. She is not the kind of human being to see plots where she should. She's somebody to see plots in predictable places that she's been told in her fairy tales and Bibles to see a plot. And while a part of me was really surprised that she didn't sense that maybe this was Nona playing her a little bit, another part of me was like, why would she? Because I don't think it would ever occur to her that somebody would take a path that they didn't really want solely to butter up a person. And part of that, I think, is also due to the fact that Wheel is still operating under this assumption that the Abbey is going to continue to operate the way that it always has. And I can't help but wonder if Abbess Glass is sort of the Abbey is probably not going to exist. Most of what's going on won't keep going the way that it has been. So you can pick whatever path you need to get wherever you need to go, and it won't necessarily matter, if I don't know. Or it could be, you can pick whatever path you need to get where you need to go, because if you don't, it won't matter anyway, because the Abbey won't exist, because we'll lose. Yeah, I don't know. But I've really enjoyed this bit being such a surprise, and that this was a promise that Kettle doesn't even know about. Like, when Nona tells her that she was made to promise this, Kettle is like, my God, Abbess Glass is like from the grave, still managing to like handle us all and play the picture, even though she's not even here anymore. She laid these pieces in place, which is really quite something. I love Abbess Glass so much. I wish she wasn't gone. And I should mention too that Nona is like constantly thinking throughout these chapters on whether Joelle did kill the abbess or not. She really seems to think that Joelle did do it. I think that, like, while she has these rational reasons for why Joelle couldn't have, I think that if she were to be forced to place a bet, she would bet Joelle had. And I think I would also place that bet. I don't know. Maybe that's just me being unforgiving. But there's this moment when everybody's like getting ready, when the bell rings, the bittel, and she's already prepared and like sitting on her bed with her hair brushed and her clothes on while everybody else is rushing around. And it just, like, this is part of why everybody that's part of Nona's team assumed the jig was up, because Joelle was so smug and had this knowing smile. The fact that they were not actually caught, Nona doesn't think that that is because nobody knows what they did. She thinks that it's because somebody is biding their time and doesn't want them to quite get caught yet. And she also postulates that there is less than like 3 steps between Joelle and Zole. She does not think it's a like long chain of information traveling. She thinks it's just like a hop, skip, and a jump, and Zole has the information, which that's unfortunate, because that means that the transfer there is pretty quick, and there's not a lot that you're going to be able to accomplish without her finding out about it. And I want to know what Joelle looked so smug about, because as it stands, nothing has happened yet to justify her expression there. So either she was wrong about the way something was going to go down, or she was smiling about something totally other that hasn't been sprung yet. And maybe, but it's odd, because letting herself show the expression of smugness, it, like, maybe it was just to fuck with them. Maybe she knows that if she looks proud of herself and smug like that, that's all it's going to take to sort of like get under Nona's skin. So all she needs to do is pretend that she knows something Nona doesn't, and that will fluster the girl enough to like fuck up her plan. I wonder. Joelle is so hateful. Oh, she is the worst. I am looking forward to her death in a way that there have been despicable characters in this series, but Joelle is like in one of these positions where a lot of the people who have been despicable are people who are trying to protect power that they have. And they're trying to maintain a position that society has granted them for some time, and they have grown accustomed to and protective of. And while that is not an adequate reason for like the cruelty and everything, it's still something that I can understand, wanting to like hold on to your power and the comfort of your position. Joelle doesn't have a motivation that I can understand for doing what she does and throwing friends under the bus, or not even friends, but like peers under the bus the way that she does. It feels like she is a pawn of her parents, but it's not, they don't have enough control over her for me to really buy that either. She is just a malicious person who has decided that she hates Nona for whatever reason, maybe just what she was fed before she came, and has turned that into like her whole personality. And this is one of those things that's like, I've seen before with rivalries that like people will have their entire personality become about trying to outdo someone else or hating someone else. And that is just no fucking way to live, man. Like, Joelle, what are you getting out of this? That's my main question. Is it favor with the queen? And by queen, I mean Zole, who isn't really, but like kind of is. Is that it? Is that enough? I don't understand her. So yeah, I'm still like very curious about what exactly that whole deal was in her expression there. So going back to the caves, we're going, back 3 years again. There's a pretty interesting moment to me here. Nona watched while Kiat finally drained away, and she wondered whether it had been him who had made the knife slip from Yisht's fingers as she tried to block that final blow. Do you know, this occurred to me while I was reading that scene. I was like, is Kiat gonna try and like kind of help her? It's hard to know if a devil would grow attached to its host, because they seem to just love violence so much that I would think that would be its own whole separate thing, and that a sort of sentimental attachment wouldn't really be possible. But it does seem like there is a suggestion here that's what happened. Yeah, and she can sense it's Kiat. There's no like real proof of it. It's just a sort of feeling that she has. I'm trying to find the spot. One patch of color lingered on the back of Yisht's hand, even as the others flowed over, under, and around it. In the end, it remained, sinking by fractions towards the two fingertips that touched the ice and through which the rest had drained into the greater blackness. So her assumption here is that Kiat is hanging out. I don't know if he's like just waving at her, or if he's sort of thinking maybe she'll take him back inside her, or what. But I am confident if she thinks this is Kiat that she is correct. So at this point, Nona has to pick up the ship heart, and it is a bad scene. Like, she is not doing well with this thing. And at one point, she's just sort of like nudging the ship heart along in front of her because she can't even like bear to touch it. And these voices begin to come into her head, and she's sort of assuming that the voices are the devils trying to like mess with her. And yet she can hear somebody yelling. I love this so much. No, nah. What? Oh, I know you're a hole. Nona lay cold against the wet ice. I'm talking to the hole. Zole! Zole! Nona sat up. Heart! What? Need the... You're in my head, aren't you? One of my devils. Need... You want me to drop the ship heart into that hole? After all I've been through to keep it? Nona! There's something very, like, ghostly about it in my head. Zole? Oh, to me. Throw it to you. You're dead. The voice in the hole fell silent, while those in Nona's skull grew louder. Zole? Nothing. Zole? Only the clamor behind her forehead as her mind began to break into fragments that would drive her mad. It was the silence that convinced her. Zole would never plead. The Ice Triber had said her piece, and there was nothing more to say. I really love that. That, like, the fact that this bitch just shut up and was like, well, fine, if you're not going to give it to me, I guess that's it then. And that is what makes Nona go, oh, shit, it really is you. I find that really funny. So Nona tosses it down there, and she doesn't even, like, have full confidence, even after kind of being like, well, to me, that clinches it. She winds up walking away, and Zole catches up with her. And she is really close to, like, collapsing by the time Zole finds her. Eventually, she's like, I straight up cannot walk. And Zole picks her up and drapes her over her shoulders. And I was just like, God damn, that is a badass bitch, man. She got tossed into this hole. And she's just like, all right, let me carry you. Hold on. You threw me the old stone, Zole said. It gave me the control over the ice I needed in order to climb out. Thank you. It was nothing. Nona coughed an amazed laugh over chattering teeth. Damn thing was killing me anyway. So Zole carries her out, and she's like manipulating the ice to like form into sort of rough steps for her to get out, which I think that's such a cool image. I enjoy that a lot. And as they start to get to the top, Zole is like, all right, look, we're going to have to figure out a way to dry you off, because there is no way if you go up to the surface with that wind in those wet clothes that you are going to survive. Not happening. How do you propose I dry them? Body heat, Zole said. We run now. And she began to jog ahead. I have to say, jogging would produce sweat. I'm not sure about that as a method of drying. I might be wrong about that, but that just, for me, that felt like that might not succeed, actually. I know oh man, there's been a couple times, you guys, I record at around 4 my time. And part of the reason that I do that is because I changed my schedule so that the times that I go to the gym would be off peak and I could record afterward. So I can go to the gym at around 2 p.m. when it's the deadest, get that done, and then be home in time to shower and eat something and then jump on camera. Well, there have been a couple times where the workout went longer or I went in a little later and I come home sweating balls, especially in the summer, but I have the AC blasting in my house. And I have finished my recording literally shaking with the cold because I came in feeling like, dripping sweat, so hot, sat down to record, and the air began to like blow down the back of my neck. And I literally felt like I was going to freeze to death. And I have been trembling by the time I'm done and have to like turn the shower hot and get in there and just soak to kind of warm myself up again. And it is such a strange sensation to have been so hot and then freeze my tits off like that. I have finally, like, occasionally remembered to turn the air off in anticipation of that. But there is no underestimating the effect of sweat plus wind. It's honestly a pretty amazing cooling system built into our bodies that works shockingly well, even though it can feel very inconvenient. So Zole tells Nona that she has to take her clothes off, but like pretty much everything. And Nona is freezing and it's like, dude, I'll take my coat off, but like, no, not the rest of it. But Zole unpacks her backpack and she has some like dry base clothes for her to change into. And then she uses her like working of the, of water to dry off the rest of Nona's clothing so that she can put it back on again and it be dry, which is honestly a really underrated use of like water magic, getting things dry again super quickly. I feel like that is something that I don't see all that often. And I feel, I wonder if that would work if you like got a stain on your clothes and you drank some wine, the wine like dripped onto your top. Could you use your control of like a liquid water wine combo to get a stain out of your clothes? Because that'd be practical. I would like that. Getting stains on my clothes is one of the banes of being big tittied. It feels like everything has to hit my tits. And I wind up with so many stains on clothes that are otherwise cute and flawless. And then I can never wear them again because I look like a schlubby mess. But yeah, this was such a neat idea. Nona put on each item as Zole dried it. The range coat came last, ice flaking away from the outer surface as Nona slung it around her shoulders. Being dry after so long made her feel human again, the tainted water gone from her skin. With daylight in the distance, she almost felt good. Let's go. So they head out, and it really is like... she gets comfortable and then it's freezing again, and then comfortable and then she gets freezing again, because later on they sort of make a kind of igloo for themselves, like a structure built from ice in order to protect them from the wind. And she is almost frozen stiff when Zole wakes her up for the focus moon and the heat from that. And then like she's in front of the focus moon, sweating. There's like water pouring everywhere, but then it all begins to freeze over again. And it's just a real back and forth that I'm like, man, that is brutal. You know, you can't actually sustain any level of comfort. You just kind of have to take the scraps of warmth that you have while you have them and hope that that'll be enough to keep you from dying overnight, you know, which is pretty much the attitude that Zole has. It's just, we need the warmth, wake up. And Nona is like, I was sleeping, which those of you who know about like hypothermia, that is one of the warning signs, is you begin to get sleepy. And if you do fall asleep, you don't wake up. That's a major, red flag, is being super cold and then your body's shutting down. You have to keep yourself awake. So yeah, Zole knows though, because Zole is from this shit. So we go to 17. We have Ara and Nona talking about the fact that Nona, first of all, Ara took the blade test and Nona didn't know that. And Ara can't believe that Nona became a holy sister, and it's just like, seriously, what the fuck, dude? I really thought that we were going to be like doing this together. And Nona's like, yeah, sorry about that. I have my own whole thing I'm doing. And I had not even thought about this, but now that they're officially nuns, they have cells of their own. They're no longer in the dormitory, which, it's really kind of a sad moment for me. Like, it's the sort of thing I could definitely see as a novice being super excited to have your own space, and I can't wait till I don't have to be in the dorm anymore and share with everybody. But then, like, when you're an adult and you sort of look back at your time when you were in the dorm, you think of that in a real rose-colored way and sort of miss it. I think that would be more true if they didn't have to share their space with Joelle, who is constantly plotting to try and fucking kill them in their sleep. But even so, nevertheless, there's just, there's a lot of that, I feel, as you get older. Things that you are so eager to become more of an adult that you don't really understand what you're giving up until later, and you realize, like, how special those times were, bittersweetness. So this is when they talk about Joelle and the fact that she's like talking to Sherzal almost guaranteed, and that they probably don't even want their daughter to be a nun, that she's just purely placed here in order to report back. And then we have Kettle talking to Nona and her discussing the promise that she made to Abbess Glass. And Nona thinks to herself here, which I found interesting, that she thinks she knows what it is that Abbess Glass is attempting to do. And I thought that was surprising. I kind of wondered if she was just blindly going along with her orders here. But she seems to have more of an idea behind it than I expected. So, at this point, they are all gathered together by Bittel again, which almost never happens. Twice in one day, by the abbess, who tells them, we will await orders from the church. We are going to be going up against this army together, basically. if the heretics come to our door, we will fight them to the very last drop of our blood. And it's very funny to see in this section how much Abbess Wheel has warmed to Nona pretty much in a matter of hours, simply by the fact that she became a holy sister instead. There's something like, I almost feel bad for her that it's this easy to make her happy. And then on the other hand, a part of me is like very envious that it's this easy. I wish I could be like that sometimes. So Nona is praying, thinking about mortality, thinking about Zole, and is talking to Sister Rose at one point about this. And that's when they get interrupted by Bittel. I had this like inverted, my bad. Today is a glorious day. Sisters and novices, we get to stand before the Ark and defend our faith with blood and bone. And poor Jula is like, oh no. Jula is not the military type. She's a holy sister through and through. All senior novices and all nuns of a fighting age will accompany me to the Ark, where we will join with our sisters in the red under the direction of General Wences. So, at this point, Nona gets separated out from the group, and I think it's Sister Pale. Yeah, Sister Pale comes and gets her, and is like, hey, the abbess wants to talk to you real quick. So she goes and meets with her, and she says, I've been told to leave you behind. She held up a roll of parchment. In the event that the sisterhood is called to the Emperor's aid, it is fitting that the shield be left to guard the younger novices. He means to guard the ship heart, of course. Nona felt as if she had been punched in the stomach. No, I can't stay here while all my sisters are facing the enemy on the battlefield. I won't. Wheel raised her hand. I must admit it seemed a strange instruction, to single out a particular novice, and even if High Priest Nevis has somehow anticipated your elevation to the sisterhood, to give such a significant duty to such a young nun. I haven't held a high opinion of you, Sister Cage, but you showed a wisdom beyond your years when you chose the black. Truly, faith may reside in the most unlikely of receptacles. I sense politics at play here. Favors bought and sold. And if there's one thing I despise almost as much as heresy, it's politics. Unfortunately, there seems to be no choice but to obey. And the way that she says that, it's very much asking, like, do you have an idea on how to get around this? So Nona says, it's the ship heart the high priest wants guarded, and it's the ship heart that puts the novices most at risk. We should take it with us. I can bring it up from the vault and put it somewhere safe at the palace. We need it on the front lines. All the Quantals will fight more effectively, and if we lose there, the enemy will get the ship heart, whether it's with us or hidden there. And Abbess Wheel immediately says, all right, yeah. To which Nona's just standing there like, wait, what? Oh, okay, good, yeah, okay, I guess I'll go do that. I love this moment so much. And all of a sudden she's like, oh, this is what Abbess Glass wanted. She just wanted me to get on her good side so that she would fucking listen to me for a change. The young ones will still need guarding, though. Someone capable. Sister Thorn. This is what Nona's suggestion. She could save Ara. If the Ark fell, Ara would lead the novices away to the west. Even the Derns would be better than the Sithral. They had their own gods and weren't given to burning people over the finer points of ancestral doctrine. Ara could do it. This is one of those where I'm like, I totally get what you're doing, Nona. I really do. And I even respect it in its way. But I can't help but wonder how Ara is going to feel about this, because you were just horrified at the idea of your friends, fighting the forces of evil. And now you're telling one of them that they have to stay behind. Is she going to thank you for that? Or is Ara going to be much more of a mind that, like, it's an extremely, like, valuable and honorable thing to do to defend the novices and be part of that effort? I really don't know which way Ara is going to fall on this, but I'm interested to see her reaction. So, yeah, once upon a time, I thought she was the chosen one come to save us all. Let's have her save the children, at least. Nona ran down the steps, weaving past startled sisters. All that scared her now, the only thing she felt unready for, was telling Ara that she had saved her. And I'm like, Again, I don't know that she's going to see it like that, babe. Like, just prepare yourself for her to not react super well. I'm just saying. Martin says, so Sister Thorne, Ara, defending the convent alone, ring any bells? Yeah, I was actually thinking about this today before I read this section, about how we have a Sister Thorne who starts things off like in the very first book and wondering when that scene was going to come up. And I was like, well, maybe that's coming, because it's like, I just didn't expect for the first book to set up something that doesn't happen until the very end of the last book. I expected it to happen within the same book, but nobody gets to dictate that rule. It's just something that I'm used to being sort of set up that way. So I pretty much talked about chapter 18 already, which is Nona and Zole being on the ice and sort of exposed to the elements, and then the focus moon showing up, and how hot it is. Doesn't it drain away? It seemed wrong somehow. So much heat wasted, so little impact. If the passage of the moon really did melt an inch from the ice every night, who knew what might be accomplished? And this is something that, had occurred to me also, is just like, how much of that is refreezing immediately, because the focus seems very, very brief, and while extremely intense, it's not long lasting enough to make the kind of difference that it seems like would be necessary to stop things in their tracks, and this is the first time that I guess she's really like seen it happening in front of her like this. So they wake up the next morning, the ridge is growing, and they have to like pack up their stuff and move because the ice is beginning to crack. And at this point, Zole is like, okay, it's time for us to wait here. And Nona's like, well, what are you talking about? And she says, oh, Tarkax, we have a bond, a shadow link. So it's easier for him to find me if we stay in one place, and he is going to meet us here. And I love how they like show up, and Zole had been like, cause Nona is trying to joke around with her, and Zole is about as receptive to that as one could expect, because she has this, it's not that she has no sense of humor. It's that it takes a great deal for her to react to humor. But she tells Nona to look in the wrong direction so that the people they're waiting for wind up totally sneaking up on her. And Zole starts laughing and says, I thought you should know what a joke was. She doesn't even start laughing. She just like smiles and shrugs. Ah, Zole, you are a delight. So they have Tarkax shows up. They have this brief conversation. And Nona, meanwhile, is like, what are the odds that this dude who happens to know Zole is this close by? What's going on here? And he says, it's time for us to go. And Nona's like, across the mountains? And he says, no way. We are absolutely not doing that. There's a way quicker way home. And she finds out here that Tarkax is Zole's uncle. And Nona asks, well, why didn't you take her in when her parents died? And he's like, I mean, maybe I will when they die. Nona turned to stare at Zole. You're not an orphan? Have I ever said I was? Well, no, but Sherzal, you believe the Emperor's sister in this matter? Fine! Nona threw up her hands. Why on Abath were you with her then? Is that not obvious, Nona Gray? Zole asked. I have been spying on you. And I was just like, ooh. And that is the end of that chapter. So that's it, kids. But I'm really excited. I can't wait to find out exactly Zole's angle here. I'm very excited about it. This is fun. We are really in the home stretch coming up. We've got what? Just over 10 more chapters. So, oh boy, this is exciting. All right. Well, I'm going to wrap up. Thank you again so much, Martin, for commissioning this. Martin says about 3 more episodes. So cool. That's perfect. I feel like there was something else that I wanted to mention here, but I can't remember it. I'll remember it as soon as I finish. But yeah, I'm really, really looking forward to finding out how the rest of this goes down. So thank you a lot for commissioning this series. It's been super fun. And I hope that y'all have been enjoying listening to it. And I will be seeing you again soon with a new episode. Until then, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.